Hello, my name is Fahd Khalifa, and today I'm going to be talking about my Jordan 1 market analysis. To first start off, I'm going to be talking about Nike and Nike's history. Nike was founded by Bill Boorman and Phil Knight in 1964. It was originally called Blue Ribbon Sport, and the logo can be seen in the top right corner. Its headquarters are in Oregon, as shown in the bottom right corner, and it went public in 1980. By the early 21st century, Nike had stores in more than 170 countries. Nike's history continued. Nike started making basketball shoes by 1972. In 1996, Nike introduced its All CG, which is all condition gear for extreme sports such as hiking, snowboarding, skiing, and any type of sport that requires very sturdy and harsh equipment like hunting. And then by the early 21st century, Nike got more into sport technology, as shown in the bottom right corner with the fuel band, showing to track your calories, track your steps. And the whole point of this is to show how Nike has started by just making running shoes and now how it's in the sports industry and different sport industries. And now, for the main focus of this project, we're going to be talking about the Air Jordan 1s. Now, the Air Jordan 1s is a part of Nike, and we'll get more into depth with that later. So the first Air Jordan was designed by Peter Morg in 1984. The retail price was $65. The first Air Jordan 1 was released in this specific colorway, the black and red. Every game Michael Jordan wore the shoe, Nike paid a $5,000 fine. And that's because in the NBA back then, you're not allowed to have colored shoes, meaning you had to have white in the shoe. And then Jordan's offer was $500,000 over 5 years. Nike's sales goals, they only predicted that they would make $3 million in the first 3 years, and they actually achieved $126 million in the first year, thanks to Michael Jordan. Now we're gonna get into some sales data. So in 2020, over 220 colorways were released. The different colors are shown on the right side of the slide. Now, I couldn't find an exact number, so I had to do the math myself. But approximately each colorway has 20,000 to 50,000 pairs, depending on how rare they are. And we're going to talk about the rarity of the sneaker later on. But at minimum, Nike would make 4.4 million pairs, which would give Nike $748 million in revenue. And at maximum, Nike would make 11 million pairs, which would give Nike $1.87 billion. Moving on to the sales data continued. Jordan 1s usually have a limited supply. With that being said, when a pair gets released, resale prices are steady or even decrease. I'm going to be focusing on the resale of the Jordans. So what that means is when a shoe initially releases, the resale price are kind of steady, or they even drop because the supply is already out. But then after a few months, when the supply is low, more people have it, more people start to wear it, there will be a diminution in the supply and a huge increase in price. And the only way for the price to decrease of the shoe, like the resale value of the shoe to decrease, is if excess supply is available, meaning Nike re-releasing the same colorway, which sometimes happens but not really, and diminishing demand, which means the shoe is out of style or no one really wants it anymore because there's no value in it since there's excess supply. Now, to show this, I'm going to be talking about an example of this Travis Scott's. So the Travis Scott's in this particular chart is all the way at the top with the reverse backward swoosh. And just for the information, this chart is not mine. I took it from StockX, which analyzes shoes. And all of these shoes you see have a minimum sales of 300 just to show accuracy of the data. But as you can see, the Travis Scott has an increase of about 670 over 550 days of its release. And that means that every single day it appreciated by $1. Now, moving on, this is a second graph just to show the appreciation of Jordan 1s. As you can see, almost all of them have 100% appreciation, which means they have already doubled their money. And you can see the top two shoes have even got an appreciation of 350%. Now, there are different types of Jordan 1s. We have the kid size and the women and men. Usually the women and men are the same price and the same concept because what's happening now is men are wearing the women shoes if they really like the colorway and the hype and what's going behind it. It's just a different size. So the men and women would be kind of similar. But we're going to talk about the kids. The kids, as shown in this graph, it takes 16 months for them to double their value, while women and men take a little less than 2 years, about like 24 months. This is due to two reasons. One is a kid's shoe is $100 to $110 versus the men and women are $170. So it's a lower price entry, but then the appreciation is still more, meaning an increase in higher percentage. And the second reason is that kids wear their shoes, which means that there are a limited supply of the kids' sizes. Now, what I mean by that is nowadays, like, adults view Jordan 1s as investments. So some of them like to hold on to the shoe, keep it dead stock meaning they don't wear it, and just kind of hold it and appreciate it. So if they hold it, the supply is still there. But the moment they wear it, there's no longer supply. And a lot of these kids, their parents are buying their shoes so their kids can wear them. Or if the kids are making their own money, they buy the shoe for them to wear it. And then there's a lower supply. Now, going on to recent mergers. This is a little bit tricky just because I'm talking about Jordan brand, but it's also part of Nike. So the most recent mergers is Jordan brand has been with Nike for 30 years. As you can see from this picture, they have released 35 different variations of the Air Jordan. The first one is Jordan 1 is what I'm talking about, but there are 34 other pairs. Every year they release a new pair, so there's 35 pairs total. And Jordan brand is 11% of Nike, which is $20 billion. Nike has also gotten Converse and Hurley, and we'll talk about that later. So for the stock price of the company, Nike currently is, this picture was taken yesterday. Nike's stock price is currently 109.37, and over the past 5 years, it has an increase of 111.26%, which is $57.60 increase in the share price. And this is just a picture of a shoe that's going to be dropping this May, and the Air Jordan 1, which goes for $170. Now to talk about the profits reports. So Q3, all of these are for Q3. And Q3 revenue was $10.9 billion, which is 5% more than last year. The direct sales were $4.6 billion, which is 15% more than last year. Digital sales increased by 19%, and that made a huge impact since it led growth in North America by 33%. Earnings per share were 87 cents. Nike paid $484 million in dividends, which was 12% more than last year. And Nike's net income for this year was $1.4 billion. Now, the competitors of Nike are three main competitors, but to be honest, for this particular project, since I'm talking about the Air Jordan 1s, there aren't really any competition just because Nike's the only one to make this type of silhouette for basketball shoes. Yes, sure, Adidas has made basketball shoes and Under Armour make basketball shoes, but it's not at the same level of the Jordan 1s. just because there's a Jordan 1, and like I said, there's 34 other variation, all of which have gotten extremely popular. But moving on, for Adidas, Adidas was founded in 1949. It's worth $37.3 billion with a yearly revenue of $12 billion. Nike makes, this year they actually made $37.8 billion. So it's actually more than how much Adidas is worth. They increased their advertising by $686 million just to catch up with Nike. And then New Balance was founded in 1906 and makes a yearly revenue of $4 billion. Puma was founded in 1948. It is worth $10.6 billion with a yearly revenue of $6.8 billion. Now, more of the class concepts. I'm going to be first talking about supply and demand. So what I noticed is this, my analysis goes against the law of supply, because at a high price, the supply is not high, it's actually low. And when the supply is low, the demand is high, creating more value. As you can see in this chart, I have my first supply, and it shifts to the left, showing a decrease in the quantity. And because of that decrease in the quantity, because of the low supply, the demand curve will shift to the right, showing an increase of demand, and that would mean an increase in price. As you can see, the equilibrium price is up, and then the supply is to the left. Now for elasticity, I'm going to be talking about the demand and the supply. So for the demand, I'm going to say that the shoe is inelastic, just because when you see it's relatively inelastic. When you see the chart, the quantity supply decreases and then the price skyrockets. Versus when it's elastic, the supply decreases by a little, but only a little of the price increases. And that's not the case with Nike. So that's why Nike is inelastic. And it's not fully inelastic just because it's a luxury at the end of the day. It's not a necessity. And what I mean by that, if you take a look at pharmaceutical drugs, let's say antibiotics increase their price, then the demand would still increase no matter what, just because it's a necessity. And in that situation, it is very inelastic. But since this is a luxury, it's going to be a little less compared to something as pharmaceutical drug. So it's going to be less elastic than that. And then for the supply, it is perfectly inelastic. And the reason why I say that, because once Nike releases a pair, there's the only supply is what's available. And when people wear it, the supply is going to decrease and decrease and decrease. So that's why the supply is kind of set. And whenever they release and you want it more, people are gonna pay the high price no matter what, just because there's a limited supply. There's only 20,000 pairs, or there's only 50,000 pairs. They almost never release the same color again. And yeah, moving on to the type of market, I would say Nike is an oligopoly market, just because it's an industry dominated by a few firms, Nike being number one. And then you got Adidas, like I said. There is limited competition. Again, there's really only Nike that's doing the basketball shoes. Yes, there's Adidas, yes, there's Under Armour, which all the fitness brands, but Nike's really the big one, which is making, all the basketball shoes. And then since Nike is a large firm with large power, Nike's decisions does affect other competitors, meaning whatever Nike does with its pricing, marketing, advertising, other firms in the market have to adjust. And like I said in the previous slides, Adidas had to spend $686 million in 2019 on marketing and advertising and trying to get influencers such as Kanye West and Pharrell Williams just to keep up with Nike. So this is a graph that I found online, and I try to understand it. I know we didn't learn this in class, but I just wanted to show a graph of this type of market. So in this type of graph, there's two things happening. One, the demand is elastic in the beginning, and the demand is inelastic on the second part. So the demand is elastic when Nike decides to up their price, but other competitors remain the same. That would be the demand is inelastic. The demand is elastic, and the demand becomes elastic. And when it's elastic, it means that the firms are not working together on their pricing. But then when the firm is in the graph, when it's inelastic, that means Nike decreases their prices and the other competitors decrease their prices, making them an inelastic relationship, and that means that they are working together on their prices. And now for the SWOT analysis, I'm going to be talking about the strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. To first start off with the strength, Nike's has a high market share of 39% of global athletic footwear. That's a lot, while the others, represent the rest of the market. Second of all, Nike has strong marketing, and I've noticed while doing this project that Nike does really support their marketing a lot and their advertising. Since in 2019 and 2020 and 2021, they spent $3.7 billion, $3.6 billion, and $3.1 billion. And then the third strength is that they have well-performed side brands. The main one is Converse. Nike bought out Converse, and Converse is doing very well, very successful, and so is Hurley. So it's able to run Nike and all the subdivisions of Nike, which is Jordan Brand, soccer, golf, etc. And then it has a whole different two side brands. And the second is there's a huge customer and athlete base. Nike's market cap is $232 billion as of 2022. That's a huge number. That means a lot of customers are loyal to the brand. There's a whole Nike community to support that, not to mention athletes such as Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Cristiano Ronaldo, all of these top end athletes. There are some weaknesses though. It's very complicated to talk about the weaknesses just because to first start off, there is lawsuits. There was a lawsuit about a guy that was filed against Nike for discrimination due to his origin. And then there seems to be a lot of news about poor labor condition, but Nike has just never addressed them, or they just keep denying it. And I've gotten mixed analysis on whether it's true or not. By poor labor conditions, I mean like it's very hot, not able to work well, as most of their factories are in Indonesia, Vietnam, and China. And the main thing is that there is a lot of not paying enough for minimum wage, and and then having child labor. But the child labor and all the poor conditions it's not necessarily true. But going back to the lawsuits, there are 4 women that in 2018 said that they are not getting paid as equally as men while they're doing the same job, and that Nike is kind of biased towards the men. Moving on from the weaknesses, we got the opportunities. The first opportunity for Nike would be to get involved in the metaverse. I know Nike already purchased a digital shoemaking brand, and that digital shoemaking brand is working with a young artist to possibly have Nike shoes in the metaverse where people can, buy their merchandise in the metaverse. I think that's going to be a good idea, since now in our generation, people are moving into NFT, the crypto world, meaning to say that would be a good opportunity for Nike to get a head start on it. Second of all is Nike is starting to exit wholesale distribution, such as dealers. So something new that I found out is Nike has most of their stuff in retailers and wholesalers, which means that they don't have control of certain prices and how things are presented. So with that being said, what Nike is doing is it's slowly trying to retract that and having them sell through the app, which is a very strong strength that they have, or one of their one of their stores here, which they've been working very well with technology on how to purchase pairs and how to return pairs. So it would be a very good idea if Nike could limit their wholesale distribution, which they are doing so. And once they do that, it will be a better opportunity for Nike, more profits, more on how their prices are priced, etc. Second thing would be producing new products. Now, Nike has been very strong with their technology, like the Fuel Band that they created, but not also that. They're making a lot of heart monitors now, advanced technology for running, for breathing, etc. So anything tech-wise would be a very good opportunity for Nike. And like I said before in the first slide, I mean, Nike has grown tremendously, and it's exploring many different areas of the world. There's basketball, there's soccer, track and field, and there's so many things that Nike can conquer and create new products for. There's snowboarding, skiing, any extreme cold sport. And now, excuse me, for the threats, I'm going to be talking about 3 threats. The first one would be competitors such as Adidas. Obviously, this is a big threat since Adidas is always trying to catch up with Nike, and they always have a big rivalry. And like I said before, Adidas had to spend $686 million just to catch up with Nike. And what that does to Nike is it pushes Nike to make more, to emphasize their marketing more and just grow their brand bigger. Another thing is Nike has a lot of counterfeit products, and that could be bad just because it can ruin the reputation of the brand. Obviously, seeing counterfeit products can mean that the products are not highly valuable and that they're low in price, and that is not a good view on Nike. It's very hard to limit that, the counterfeit products, just because it happens with very big companies such as Gucci, etc. But Nike is working on reducing the amount of counterfeit products there are. The second is taxes. Now, Nike, as I said before, made a $1.4 billion profit, but Nike has been playing their taxes strategically just because it's a big corporation. This is a very far-fetched threat, but if Nike can no longer strategically move their money around to, I wouldn't necessarily avoid taxes, but they are not paying the taxes that they should pay just because they're moving their money strategically. In that case, if it does take a big hit and they have to pay higher taxes, that would eventually hurt Nike. And then finally, the last slide is all my sources. Thank you very much and have a good summer.